Welcome to the Exhibit A podcast.
We are on, and we have today a woman who came into the San Gabriel Valley, the city of Pasadena, and just shook up the world, and that is Cindi Flynn. How are you today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. I say that because about 2 years ago, I was sitting in a provisor's meeting, and everybody's talking about you. And they go, you know who she is, right? You know who she is, Cindi Flynn, right? She's just really an up-and-coming star. She's everywhere. And then finally, you came to our provisors meeting. And for the viewers out there who don't know, provisors is a networking group, and there's a bunch of them here in Pasadena. You attended ours, and sure enough, everybody was impressed by you, including myself. And then we've had a couple of lunches together. We've gotten to know each other. So today we're going to talk about some topics that are going to be interesting to our client base, because a lot of our clients own businesses. And you're an employment attorney. In fact, you're a very impressive employment attorney. And I've chosen two topics. If we could get to the second one, we will. But the first one is going to be what employees need to know about 1099 employees, or employers, I should say. If you're owning a company, what you need to know about 1099s, because that landscape has changed. And the second one, if we get to it, is the new rules regarding sexual harassment training, because that's been a big wave in businesses as well. But before we do that, I also want to introduce my partner, the magnificent Casey Marticarena. She's a very experienced certified family law specialist, and the two of you know each other from provisors as well, right?
Yes. Cindy's known as the Queen of Provisors, or at least I would call her the Queen of Provisors.
You're too kind.
Well, we're going to get into that in a second, but go ahead.
Thanks for having me, Dawn.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Cindi a little bit. Now, Cindi, you grew up in the great Orange County, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I know that not necessarily from reading about you, but from when we met. What city did you grow up in?
Rancho Santa Margarita, so South Orange County.
Okay, and then I know that the two of you have something in common, that you both went to UC Irvine.
Yeah.
Ah, yes.
You guys ever talk about that?
No.
No.
Yeah. So it produces good attorneys, apparently. And then I know that you've been in business. Well, actually, let's talk about your what you majored in at Irvine, because I found this very interesting. You majored in criminology, law and society, and psychology and social behavior. Were you thinking at one point like a law enforcement career or what?
No, I always knew I was going to be in law, and it was the closest law-related major that they had, so that's why I picked it.
Okay. Well, that does make sense.
Yeah.
So I always say that people that are lawyers really like government. They like to know about politics, so either, a political science or something related to government is really good. And then psychology and social behavior is really, really good for the practice of law. Isn't it, Casey?
It is. In fact, I got my degree at UC Irvine in psychology and social behavior. I loved studying it, and I use it every single day as a lawyer.
Yeah, I know it. I've seen how you cross-examine child custody evaluators with your background. So here's the thing that I find interesting about you, Cindi, is that you and I have something in common, that we love business, right? You are a business owner, and you love reading self-help books. When we talk, we always talk about our favorite books, and you were so sweet to send me one of your favorite books. Where did you get that?
The love of books, or
the business.
just,
I mean, you. I think you, like me, you like the idea of how businesses work and how do you make them, profitable and just the whole science of it.
Yeah, so I actually grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My parents ran a printing company in the 80s, and I got to go in as a kid and, staple papers and fold brochures and send out stationery for clients. And I got to see firsthand not only what it was like to run a business, but what it was like to have employees. And
that didn't turn you away?
No, I really wanted to help the small business owner. And, unfortunately for my parents, they went through bankruptcy and divorce, and a lot of these employment issues, business issues, tore them apart. I wasn't a lawyer at the time to help them. But yeah, I knew pretty early on I wanted to be a lawyer. So in high school, I started working at an employment law firm, was there 8 years, all through college, all through law school, and then got out, worked for a few firms, and started my own practice.
When did you start your own practice?
About 5.5 years ago.
Okay.
And
You just said something that we're going to have to bring you back, and you talked about your parents going through a divorce and owning a business, and that's a topic in and of itself that we need to put that on the bookmark, because that's a really interesting one. Sad, but it needs to be discussed. You also, and Casey, tell me if I'm being bad on this or not, okay? But you have perhaps the very best elevator speech that I've ever heard. Okay, go ahead, give it to us.
All right. So my name is Cindi Flynn. My firm is Hackler Flynn and Associates, and I run an employment defense law firm with 7 women attorneys, 2 women paralegals, and a male receptionist.
Beautiful. I love it. Okay. So on your webpage, I noticed, because I looked on it today, is that you've got a picture of your team. Now, there's a man in there. Is that your receptionist?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So, you know what? You get away with that, but I always say, I hope that you treat him nicely. Okay?
Of course.
So, okay. Well, let's talk about today's topic, okay? At least topic number 1, which is going to be what employers need to know about 1099 employees. Okay, and in the old days, at least, my old days, not yours necessarily, you always heard people talking about, yeah, he's a 1099 employee. I don't have to pay him as much, or I don't have to do the taxes. And a lot of people that were 1099 employees felt like they were self-employed, and they thought it was the best of both worlds. There's a lot of people that like doing that. Well, the landscape's changed, and maybe you could describe how it's changed and when that took place.
Sure, absolutely. So last year, a big California Supreme Court decision came down known as Dynamex. And that basically says the presumption is that everyone who works for you is an employee. And in order to prove otherwise, that they're a 1099, you have to prove A, B, and C of this test. And every business is having a problem, well, most businesses are having a problem with Part B of the test, which says that if you are hiring someone to help you in your business and they are performing work that the business entity does, the same type of work, they need to be an employee.
Wow. Okay. So with respect to the test, is there more things that the court would look? I didn't know that it came from a California Supreme Court. I thought it was a modification of the code, the labor code. It actually came from a California Supreme Court case.
Yes, last April.
Okay.
So it's a year now.
Okay. And so are there factors that the court's going to weigh to determine whether or not somebody is an employee, or is it just strict liability type of thing?
Well, that's just it. I mean, we used to have the 20-factor IRS test,
Yeah.
and, there are so many jurisdictions in California that an employee can go down, right? And it would depend which jurisdiction you're in. If you're in front of the EDD, it's a little different than the labor commissioner, and different jurisdictions would have different hold weight on the factors a little bit differently, but you still had that basic 20-factor test. Now, though, Part A of the test is whether or not the person has that independent control. So that's still a factor, right, in hiring an independent contractor.
Could you give us an example of what that means?
Yeah, it's, if you hire a CPA to help you, you're not telling them how to do how to do your taxes, right? They exercise that independent control and direction, and that would qualify as a proper independent contractor as far as Part A goes. And then Part B, like I mentioned, if using the CPA example, if you are a CPA firm hiring a CPA to help you, like even if it's just during tax season, that is your business, and then the person you're hiring is working on that same line of work, that same business, then it goes to prove that they are an employee of the company, not that they cannot be a 1099. And then Part C is the last factor, which says that the person working for you is in an independently established trade. So like CPA firms are generally an independently established trade. They have a license, that sort of thing. But again, if you are a CPA firm hiring a CPA, even if it's just during your busy season for a few months to help you, you're gonna run up against some hard facts to prove.
Cindi, I have a question for you. Excuse me. For our business owner clients, I've heard a lot of people say, well, they're an individual, but they're incorporated, so it's okay. Does the fact that an individual that is doing work for you is incorporated, does that shield them from this law? Does that shield the employer from this law?
That's a great question, and no, it does not. It does not matter. We've seen EDD auditors try and say that corporations, big corporations that you and I have heard of, should be an employee. And they literally have hundreds of people working for them. So if it's just one person who's incorporated, you're going to have a lot bigger of a battle to fight rather than a giant corporation.
Okay. I want to get into that a little deeper, and so remind me, please, because that's a very good area. But what are the benefits detriments of a 1099 employee versus not for those who may be thinking about starting a business?
So typically speaking, an employee is a little bit more costly. You're paying for their workers' comp, you're paying their taxes, you're paying for unemployment insurance, all of those things. And on average, we see that employers spend an extra 17 to 24% when you're paying someone as an employee versus an independent contractor. But the risk involved in paying someone incorrectly or misclassifying them is just exorbitant.
Huge.
Yeah.
Go with that, because I think I've heard that before. How bad could it get?
So with a misclassification case, not only do you have the fact that the person should have been an employee versus an independent contractor, but you're also on the hook, most likely, for overtime and sick leave and breaks and lunches, and a lot of wage and hour violations are also involved. So we've seen, a $3,000 or $4,000 actual claim in damages can be upwards north of hundreds of $1,000 because you're paying for the penalties, the back taxes, attorney's fees for plaintiff, and then of course you need to hire our firm to help with the defense.
And it seems that the more that it gets litigated, and if you're on the losing end, the more expensive it's going to get.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Cindi, I assume that if an employee were to get through the threshold A, B, and C of this test, they're now deemed an employee and the employer is liable as the employer would be with any other employee. What types of cases are we seeing? Are we talking sexual harassment cases? Are we talking, injury at work cases? What types of cases are we seeing?
So misclassification itself is a big issue.
Okay.
So just having the person be misclassified, and it's most closely related to wage and hour law. So breaks, lunches unaccounted for, that sort of thing. But, there's a lot of liability too on business owners for sexual harassment. Like if you have a receptionist and she interacts every day with the FedEx driver, and, there could be something there. But the liability is just huge for employers in California. And so anytime you are considering hiring anyone, make sure you run it by your lawyer.
Let me ask you this, is a little bit of a hypo, I guess, is a gentleman's working as a CPA for a CPA firm during tax season. He thinks he's a 1099. The employer thinks that he's a 1099 employee. But during the time that he's in the office, he's harassing the receptionist. And, there's a suit that involves the two of them. So I think I know the answer to this, but does the employer have liability on both sides in that case? Assuming that
Yes.
So there could be also this tort liability that's involved as well, working within the scope of the company.
Right.
Okay. All right. So going back to our question about what employers can do, I know that we're talking about when single people are incorporated, but they're only really working for one company and they're working within that realm. Are there things that you would advise companies to make sure that these people are doing that would distinguish them from being employees? I mean, incorporation is a fact. I mean, it's not going to be ignored. I'm going to guess, just not a heavily weighted fact, right? But there's other things I presume that could be done.
Yeah, I mean, but after Dynamex, it's very difficult to make a case that somebody is a proper independent contractor if they are within the same line of work. So if you are hiring like a specialist, it's always good not to label it as an independent contractor agreement, but an agreement between two corporations. So there are things you can do to protect yourself. And of course, it is better to pay a company than a person individually. All of that stuff still helps. Mm. But at the end of the day, we've seen lawsuits with, a person who came to the company and said, I want to be an independent contractor. Here's my independent contractor agreement. Here's the name of my company. I'm going to invoice you. And now he's suing for $350,000.
Yeah.
So if you want to sleep at night.
Well, what about if that person advertises on the web, has a web page?
He does.
Okay. What if that person has other clients, works for several other companies, and the person isn't in the direct employment, doesn't do the exact work, but is more of like a vendor type of a situation.
So all of that stuff helps, and that's where we fight tooth and nail on every issue, but the thing is that smaller businesses, especially startups, people who don't have the means to really fight it out in court on whether or not someone is properly classified. I mean, you could be in court for 2 or 3 years. You guys know as litigators and how expensive that gets. So
yeah. One of the things that Casey and I know is that litigation could get very, very expensive, and sometimes it's just worth, paying that money up front and doing the right thing. We've seen lots of cases with our clients making some wrong decisions and paying a lot more than what they should. So that makes sense. So, the idea that a startup company as vendors, should every vendor be looked at as potential employees then?
Well, every independent contractor should be. We always recommend vendor compliance agreements so that if you are hiring a staffing company to help you, who pays the payroll taxes, who helps, provide bodies for your company, make sure you have a vendor compliance agreement with them, that they are taking out taxes, that they are paying everyone properly as an employee, and so that would cover you more so.
Okay. Now, you're a believer in employers having insurance.
Yes.
Okay. What kind of insurance should the basic company have? Let's say it's a startup company, it's a video marketing company, and they're just starting off. What kind of insurance should they have, assuming that they've got employees?
So you want, obviously, general liability, directors and officers insurance, and then also something most businesses don't have is EPLI, Employment Practices Liability Insurance. And that can really help save a business. Make sure you get a good policy, because there are a lot of policies out there. But if you have a good policy, it really will save you in the long run.
Okay. Yeah. So insurance is important. What other questions do you have?
Those are some really good tips, and all I can say is, wow! I feel like there are a lot of bases to cover, and I think the takeaway is for small business owners, they have to have a strong relationship with an employment attorney. They have to be insured. There's just so many areas where one issue can really bankrupt a small business.
Yeah, that's right. Before we go to the next topic, I want to also say that I noticed by looking on your website that you have a way of interacting with people on the internet for consultations and things. Could you describe that a little bit?
We offer, consultations for our clients. In fact, we understand that so many are busy running their firms that HR can likely be low on the totem pole of importance. And so we try and make it as convenient as possible for our clients. So we do a lot of phone consultations, Skype consultations. Oftentimes we don't even meet our clients in person, because we can do everything via phone, email, and conference call.
Yeah, I would think that having the convenience to be able to call you or one of your attorneys with a panic attack would be very comforting for your clients, right? Yeah, very good. And do you prepare employment handbooks?
We do. We do everything from employment agreements, employment handbooks, not so much independent contractor agreements anymore, all the way through class action defense lawsuits.
Okay, cool. Well, now let's turn to our second topic. This one right here is something I'm surprised that we're in now, because I'm a lot older than the two of you. I've been around the block, and sexual harassment is not new, man. That's not a new topic, okay? Back when I was a young kid, man, people were talking about problems in the workforce. But now here we are, 2019, and we've got new sexual harassment training, and it's because of these things that have surfaced in the public eye. So what are the new rules for sexual harassment training?
So the rule used to be where companies with 50 or more employees had to have their managers trained every 2 years for sexual harassment. Now it's everyone in the company, so managers and non-managers. or supervisors and non-supervisors.
So it's not the regular staff that needs the training? It's just,
It is the regular staff, yeah.
Okay.
Everyone in the company.
Everybody, okay.
And the rule used to be 50 or more. Now it's 5 or more.
Okay. Every 2 years. So if somebody's had that training before, too bad. They've got to do it again.
Right.
And again.
Right.
Well,
Okay.
that's interesting. How would a small business report compliance, or
Yeah, good question.
how does that work?
So it's really only going to come into play if there's an issue. It's not so much that, California government agencies are going around and checking per se.
No auditing.
Right. No auditing there, but it is going to be a bigger issue if you have a sexual harassment case in your company and your employees weren't trained. And you have like strict timelines when you need to start training new hires or once you promote somebody, because it's a 2-hour training for managers and it's a 1-hour training for everyone else.
Okay. Another reason to have somebody like your firm, or so you
Yes.
and somebody like your firm on tow. Do these rules, both for the 1099 employee and the sexual harassment training, apply to nonprofits?
Yes, they do. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I was on a board that will go unnamed. Actually, a couple of boards, and they're just learning about that. And it could be scary if they don't comply with these rules because they typically don't have the cash available to pay out things, and a lot of them don't have insurance to cover this, right?
Right. We represent a lot of nonprofits as well, and we're trying our best to make it as affordable as possible for those nonprofits, and it's our way of giving back. But there are 2 ways you can do the training. But it has to be interactive, and it has to be done by either an attorney or someone who's certified. So if you're going to go through the process of doing the training, make sure your person is qualified.
Okay. So you're a CPA firm that's got
Yeah.
20 employees. Every 2 years, they need training. Can it be done by video?
So it depends. The video needs to be interactive, so it can't just be a YouTube video where you call everyone in and everyone watches it. It has to be interactive. And so what we recommend and what our firm offers is, of course, in-person training, but also webinars. And the webinars are interactive so that, they have to answer questions and go through the motions.
Okay.
And this is as of 2019?
Yes, and every company has until January 1st, 2020 to comply.
God. Okay. My firm's going to be having you over here pretty soon. So there's also, I'm going to imagine that you should have a sign-up sheet for people that are attending this thing, right? Because you want to prove that it was given. Okay.
I'm worried. I'm worried about all those, small businesses that you mentioned. How does this information trickle down to them? Those,
That's what this podcast is for. Are you kidding me?
I mean, I'm thinking about, the tiny taco shop and,
Right.
how does this, and it applies to them as well. They have to have sexual harassment training. They
Yeah.
have 5 or more employees.
Right.
To me, it could be so much so that people may not want to go into business when you start putting these rules. But I think that you've said before that, California is about the worker, right?
Right.
The rules are about the worker, not the employer, so we poor employers, so.
Right. I know. It's true. Well, and, if you are an employee of your company, right, even though you're the owner, you started it, founding partner, you count as an employee of the 5. So it's really just you and 4 other people.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not exempt.
No. Okay. Okay. Well, let's make this a little lighter subject because you just scared me to death. So I want to change the topic. I looked on the internet and I found an article, and you got one for me too, apparently.
I do.
So let's see who does better here. Okay. So I'm going to try to shock you, and you can try to shock me with your latest article. This is about a woman whose ex-husband wins the lottery. Okay. Now, she had been ordered to pay him spousal support for about 6 years because she was the primary breadwinner. And this guy apparently wasn't much of an earner during the lengthy marriage. A different state than California, I believe. And you may know this case a little bit because this is the guy that won $273 million in a Mega Millions lottery. And guess what? He left his ticket in the place that he purchased the ticket, and somehow they were able to find him and stuff like that. But that's the type of guy it is. I mean, he leaves his lottery ticket behind, right? So this article says that, she just wants him to stop receiving spousal support. That's all she asked for, right? She's not asking a lot. He just do the right thing. And apparently, he didn't just offer it up, right? He didn't say, yeah, you don't have to stop paying me anymore. So Casey, turning to you, she comes into your office. What are you going to do?
Let me get the facts straight. Wife is paying ex-husband spousal support.
That's right.
Okay. And ex-husband wins the lottery. Wife says, okay, I don't want to pay you support anymore.
Right.
So if we're in California, the analysis is, well, are his needs met? And can he support, is he now self-supporting? If the answer is yes,
what do you think, Cindy?
There's an
I
answer.
think he is. 273 million sounds.
So if he's self-supporting, no longer has a need, then we'll ask the court to terminate spousal support.
What about the idea of her going to court and going, I want to not only stop my having to pay him, but how about if he starts paying me?
If I'm representing wife on that issue, I'm going to argue that the marital standard of living would have dictated that she should have been receiving support because
Beautiful.
during marriage, he was the higher earner, and she perhaps stayed home for some time, devoted to domestic duties and otherwise more of the 4320 factors. If those facts don't exist, then it's a really, really hard
Well, what
thing
they
to
say
sell.
about the law, right? Arguing, if you don't have the facts, argue the law. If you don't have the law, argue the facts. You don't have either. You make it up, right? So, no.
Yep.
So anyways, the article goes on. She previously told the New York Post that she doesn't plan to go after her ex for her share of the $1 million lump sum. She says, quote, I'm not going to go after anything. I have morals. I know what I've worked for and everything that I have. I just hope that he does the right thing. What do you think the right thing for him to do in this case? There's a woman that cared for him, right? Really supported him. Was probably a very good woman and he goes and divorces her. Should he give her any part of that lottery?
Well,
Come
I
on,
mean,
I want your legal analysis here.
Legal or personal?
Yeah.
You're asking, should he do the right thing?
Yeah, it depends what the question
Yeah.
is. I mean, if she doesn't want anything, she's probably better off not taking a cent of his. That'd be my thought.
Okay.
But
Okay. Well, she was also asked, "Hey, were you interested in kind of like reconciling?" And we do have cases where people reconcile, and her answer was, "quote He's not appealing to me all of a sudden because he has this money." She's wrong, isn't she?
no, she's dead on.
Well, let's assume that they spent, 30 years, 20 years together and just, they're divorced, but hey, maybe they have 2 kids. Maybe those kids are still minors and, maybe they should benefit from that lifestyle as well. Even if they're in college, hey, you know what, Dad? Do the right thing. You need to pay for their college education, their room and board and all of that. So I think there's, I'm interested to know more facts, but there are ways where I think she can step in and say, do the right thing.
Okay. Well, here's the last fact of this article. The husband was interviewed about the woman's comments, right? And he seemed a little sensitive about the situation. And his quote is, $270 million does not make me appealing to her. That's what she said. And he says, it's over with. I just want her to stop eating my life. And that's the conclusion of this very happy story. Any other comments about this? Your legal analysis. Okay, Cindy, tell me about yours now.
All right. So I don't know if you guys heard in the news, but there was a woman in Arizona who's been in a coma the last 10 years and had a baby.
I know
Did
this
you guys
case.
hear about this?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so apparently, she's been comatose for 10 years. A nurse at the hospital that she was staying at raped her, and her stomach started getting bigger and bigger, and they thought, oh, well, maybe she's filling up with water. This is odd. No, she gave birth. And she's 29 years old. The suspect is 36. And so I wanted to hear your guys' opinion on the family law that's going to happen with the child custody issues.
Well, he's going to have a hard time having custody because he's going to go to prison for life.
Right.
Okay, because and it's not family law; it's my criminal background. I mean, that's called rape, and that's called, at least in California, it's life without the possibility of parole. Okay, but assuming that he was out, what would happen? It was very interesting in child support laws. is there's a case in Texas that Casey knows about, and this is a case where a guy was partying with a bunch of people, and he and a lady went to the back room and apparently passed out before they could have any kind of sexual interaction. Well, as the story goes, she copulated him, took the sperm, and then implanted it herself. Now the question is, in that case, is he liable for child support for that child that she later has? And the law was, yes, he was.
Wow.
And it's because the government, the policy is that the government wants a father, right? They want every child to have a father. And you might think that's because the government is so loving, right? It's because the government doesn't want to pay for that child, right?
Right.
So to my thing is that, number one, he's not going to get custody. Would you agree?
Are we back at this scenario?
Yeah, back at the...
Well, assuming he's not in jail, I'm going to say he's not going to get visitation. Well,
not even monitored visits?
You know what? I have to say I've had some really egregious scenarios, and mother or father who is acting badly still gets time. Family court, I've rarely, maybe but one case in extreme circumstance, seen the court say no visitation. So if the father wanted to push this, I think he may get something, maybe monitored.
Here's what the argument I would make for the mother's family. I would assume that the maternal parents would be involved in this as well as siblings. But if he commits violence against mom, he's really committed violence against the child. That's what I would be going with right there. I mean, this is a character that has no business caring for kids because he's got such a horrific monster mentality, right? So
that's a good argument. But as we know, we represent people on both sides. We represent people who are under restraining orders, but they still see their kids. So I think in the scenario that Cindi brings up, the mother is in bedridden. She's in a coma. So I assume there would be some sort of legal representative for the mom that would say, I'm standing in the place of mom. Mom's the joint legal or the legal custodian, and we don't want a relationship.
Right.
So,
right. Well, look, we're out of time. What I want to do is thank both of you, because I know Casey actually came from court to do this, and she's going right back to court after this. And you've got a very important appointment after this as well with a client or somewhere. I'm not going to get into your business, but I know that you had dedicated just a little bit of time for us today, and I really appreciate it, Cindi. Please come back. Okay, we love this. This was great.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on Exhibit A.
Exhibit A is produced by David Lindley at the law offices of Donald P. Schweitzer in Pasadena, California. For more information, visit us online at PasadenaLawOffice.com and all social media platforms.